The king who decreed conversion. Once there was a king who decreed expulsion upon his country by way of forced conversion. That is, anyone who wanted to remain in the country would have to recant his faith, and if he did not, he would be expelled from the country. Some gave up all their belongings and wealth and left in poverty in order to retain their faith and remain Jewish. But some of them were not willing to sacrifice their belongings and wealth, so they stayed there in a state of forced conversion. In private, they practiced the Jewish faith, but in public, they were not able to behave as Jews. The first king passed away and a son became king. He began to rule the country with an iron fist. He conquered several states and had great wisdom. Because he ruled over his ministers with severity, they spoke against him and conspired to overthrow him and to obliterate him and his descendants. There was among the ministers one of the forced converts. He reasoned to himself, why after all did I stay here as a forced convert? Because I valued my wealth and possessions. Now, if the country will be without a king, the people will swallow each other alive. For a state cannot exist without a king. Therefore he decided to go and inform the king without their knowing. He went and told the king that they were conspiring against him as described. The king investigated to see if the matter was true. When he saw that it was, he stationed guards. On the night that the ministers made their attempt against the king, they were caught, and the king judged each one accordingly. The king asked the converted minister, what honor can I bestow upon you for having saved me and my descendants? If I thought to make you a minister, well, you already are one. If I were to give you riches, you are wealthy already. Tell me what honor you would like, and I will grant it to you. The minister asked, but will you really fulfill my request? The king answered, surely. The minister said, swear to me, and he did. Then the minister said, my main honor would be that I be permitted to be a Jewish in public, to wear a talis and a tefillin in public. The king was very annoyed, for no one was allowed to be Jewish in all his kingdom. But he had no choice, because he had sworn. In the morning, the minister donned his talis and tefillin publicly. After this, the king passed away, and his son became king. He began to rule with gentleness, for he saw how they had wanted to wipe out his father. He conquered many nations, and he had very great wisdom. He gathered together all the astrologers to tell him how his seed might be cut off in order that he guard himself from it. They told him that his seed would not be cut off as long as he guarded himself from a bull and a ram. They wrote this down in their book of annals. He commanded his sons that they also rule in the same manner as he, with gentleness, and he passed away. Then his son became king, and he began to rule with severity as his grandfather. He conquered many states and came upon an idea. He decreed that no bulls or rams be found in his kingdom in order that his seed not be cut off. He then had nothing to fear, so he ruled the country with a strong hand and became great in wisdom. He then came up with an idea how to conquer the world without war. There are 7 regions of the world. That is, the world is divided into 7 parts. And there are 7 shooting stars, each one shining on one of the 7 regions. And there were also 7 variety of metals, and each one of the 7 stars shines on one of these metals. So he went and gathered all 7 types of metals and commanded to be brought the portraits of all the kings, which are made of gold and which hang in their palaces. From all of these he made a man. His head was of gold, his torso of silver, and so all the other limbs were of other metals. All of the 7 metals were included within him. They positioned him on top of a high mountain, and all the 7 bright stars shined upon this man. When some person needed advice or to know whether to commence some business or not, he would stand next to the limb made of the metal that was native to his region. He would focus on the question of whether he should do this business or not. When it was appropriate for him to do it, the limb would light up and shine, and if not, it remained darkened. Through this, the king conquered the whole world and gathered great wealth. But the statue only had this ability if the king would cast down the haughty and raise up the lowly. So he sent out invitations to all the generals and other ministers with high-ranking posts and honors, and they all came. And he cast them down and took away their posts. Even those who had inherited position since his grandfather's time, he took their posts away. He also raised up lowly ones and appointed them in their place. Among the ones that the king sought to cast down was the Jewish minister described before. The king asked him, "What is your position and appointment?" He answered, "My position is that I be allowed to be Jewish in public in return for the favor that I did for your grandfather." He took this away from him and he returned to his false conversion. One time, the king went to sleep and dreamed that he saw a clear sky and saw that all 12 signs of the zodiac. He saw that the bull and the ram, which were among the signs, were laughing at him. He woke in great anger and fright and commanded them to bring him the book of annals. He was saw written there that his seed would be cut off by a bull and a ram. A great fear befell him. He related this to the queen, and the great fear fell upon her and on their children. He became very distraught and called to all his dream interpreters, and each one interpreted differently, but none of their interpretations satisfied him. A terrible fear befell him. Then one wise man came to him and told him that he had tradition from his father that there are 365 courses of the sun, and there is a place where all the 365 courses shine. A staff of iron grows there, and if someone who suffers from fear comes to this staff, he is saved from fear. This found favor in the eyes of the king, so he went to the place with his wife, his children, and all their family, and with the wise man who had informed them about it. Along the way, there stands an angel who is appointed over anger. Through anger, an angel of destruction is created, and this angel is appointed over all destructive forces. So those who travel there ask him the way, for there is a straight path before a man, and one filled with mud, and one filled with imperfections and potholes and other various roads. There is also a road in which is a fire, 4 miles from which one is burned. The king asked him the way, and he directed them to the road with the fire. They went there. The wise man kept looking ahead to see whether they were coming to this fire, for he had a tradition from his father that there is such a fire there. Presently, he saw the fire and saw that walking through it were kings and Jews wearing talis and tefillin. This was because in the countries of those kings dwell Jews. Therefore those kings were able to pass through the fire. The wise man said to the king, "Since I have a tradition from my father that 4 miles from the fire one is burned up, I would rather not come any closer." The king thought to himself, being that other kings were going through the fire, that he would try it as well. The wise man answered him, "I have the tradition handed down from my father. Therefore I do not want to go. If you want to go, go." The king and his family went. The fire consumed them, and his seed were entirely cut off. When the wise man came back to his house, the ministers were dumbfounded, for the king had been protected from the bull and the ram. How could it be that he and his seed were destroyed? Then the converted minister spoke up and said, "It was because of me that he was cut off." The astrologers saw, but did not understand what they saw. With the skin of a bull, tefillin are made, and from the wool of a ram, the fringes of a talit are made. And it was because of them that he and his seed were cut off. Those kings in whose countries Jews lived, who were talis and tefillin, went through the fire with no harm at all. Our king was cut off because in his country, Jews wearing talis and tefillin were not allowed to live. That is why the bull and the ram and the zodiac were laughing at him. For the seers of the zodiac saw, but did not know what they saw. And so his seed was cut off.